Hi and welcome to today's show where I'm on my own, no one here, just me. And we're going to be talking about money and menopause and the hidden financial impact of the menopause. Hi and welcome to Accelerating Your Wealth with your host, myself, Rebecca Robertson. I'm an independent financial advisor and wealth coach. I'm the director of Evolution Financial Planning, who is also our sponsor for today's show. If you're somebody that is not sure what to do with their finances, maybe you're working and you're not sure what to do with the bonuses you've got at work, or maybe you started a business and you've got profits and you're not sure what you should be doing to enable you to A, pay yourself more, or B, potentially retire earlier. Maybe you're somebody that's thinking about, do I overpay on the mortgage? You've received some inheritance. You've got lots of questions around your finances and what to do next. Then check out Evolution Financial Planning, who are regulated independent financial advisors and financial planners that can help you make some of those big decisions in life. We've had many guests over the last few weeks and everyone's been talking about the menopause, and I just wanted to spend a little bit of time just focusing on how that really impacts women and their finances. Now, we've talked about this with other people, but the reduced amount of capacity when it comes to their mental capacity, but then needing to take time off work, and then also then having to possibly be carers at the same time, that generally having to pick up lots of different plates and look after lots of different people alongside that sandwich generation, or maybe still in having children, maybe not young children, but maybe teenagers at the same time. And therefore they're getting possibly missed promotions at work, or it might be that they're not able to go for that next opportunity through their business, lead a project. I know myself, the last couple of years, I've done hardly anything major, and it was only once I started to feel better that I relaunched my podcast. I'm now planning events, but actually for a long period of time, I just wasn't able to do it. The impact that has financially, not just on the relationships, not just on our businesses or our careers, but then it has that knock-on effect with our finances, where it might be that we're not working as much, we're not earning as much, and therefore we're not able to save, we're not able to invest, we're not able to put into our pensions. So it does have a massive impact on women. And that sort of ongoing is how much is actually your brain fog and this sort of time of life, this adjustment of transition, actually financially costing you. I was looking at some statistics, and one of them is 1 in 10 working women have left their jobs due to the menopause symptoms. Nearly 1 million women in the UK alone having left roles because of them. Another 23 to 28% are considering quitting, while many others reduce hours or pass promotions due to lack of workplace support. Studies show that 1 in 10 leave their jobs. 28 women consider leaving their jobs due to the symptoms. Over 53% of women have taken time off due to symptoms. Reduced roles, 14 to 18% of women reduce their hours or go part-time. Missed opportunities, 6 to 8% skip promotions or training and reduce their responsibilities. Now, the symptoms are quite wide, and it's not something that I really ever realised. And a lot of the people that I have on the show didn't really, it almost like, it's like the bus that turns up that you was never expecting. And it can not just cause brain fog and forgetfulness, but also severe anxiety, as well as the normal memory issues or hot flushes, as we might know it, as more from our grandparents or our parents. But there's just a huge, really sort of lack of support when it comes to this. The financial impact with women with severe symptoms are 43% more likely have left their job by the age of 55, and 23% are more likely to reduce their hours. So the loss of women to the workforce due to menopause-related issues is estimated to cost $1.8 billion annually in the US alone. So this is a big issue, and I know it's been talked about quite a lot, but I just want to talk about it in the context of, okay, what else could we do? What else could be done for these women? What other things should we be considering? This is like a complete transition of life, something that we never really get talk about or never really prepare ourselves for. It's we talk about having a baby, we might talk about getting married, buying our first home, those kind of things. That first career, leaving university, going to university, but we actually don't talk about the menopause. It's almost like brushed under the carpet. And it's a real identity shift that can really affect financially the different elements in our life quite majorly, and I just heard just from some of those statistics. So for a lot of women, there's this fear of running out of money, but there's versus this real desire for freedom. So there's this transition period where, they will want to go part-time, they want to reduce their hours, they maybe want to look at having a different career. And through that transition, then they might be giving up that job with the big pension contribution. It might be 8, 10, 20% of their salary, not normally 20%, that's quite an expense. 12 or 13 is probably the highest I've heard of. And they might have bonuses associated, but they're feeling that they can no longer sustain that sort of plate, if you like, that spilling many plates, that something has to give. And that's something that certainly I felt with looking after my animals, looking after my children, looking after my husband to a degree. He can be quite self-sufficient, to be fair. And he plays a big role in the home. But it was still that mental load of the school run and what PE kit they need, and when the flea treatment for the dogs ran out, and all of that long list of things that just feels never ending, versus the desire to want to do more or want to have that financial freedom. There's this real push and pull of where do I go next? And then there's this emotional spending, or like an aversion to taking risk. And I felt that myself. I almost felt like any kind of risk that I would normally take as a business owner, just give it a go, fear of failing, don't care. All those sort of self-perceptions and judgments and worry about people, what people would think of me for failing or what people would be saying about me, just became massified. I'm not even sure of the right word, amplified, there we go, 10 times more, because I just was so self-conscious about what people would think, what people would say. So I didn't want to take that risk. I didn't want to look like I was failing. And therefore, I would often, go and do the quick wins, those sort of quick emotional wins in easy, quick spending. So we've got potentially less opportunity, less income coming in, and more spending. And I often see this a lot with generally women at the moment, where we have to look a certain way, we have to be a certain way, your hair has to have done, your nails have to have done, cosmetic surgery, it might be certain procedures, for example, Botox. I see so many people now that they're on their budget planners they send me is Botox. And we're not just talking £50, we're talking £200 or £300, if not more, every month. And women are more willing to spend the money on those things because of that emotional push and pull, regardless of menopause, to allow themselves to feel better about themselves, to feel more confident, which I'm a massive advocate for. But there does come a point where are we putting those sort of emotional band-aids over the real issue at hand? And often those real issues, those financial gaps in our finances, or chasms for some people, are being ignored. Did you know I wrote a book? It's called Accelerating Your Wealth. Funny enough, the same as the show, Accelerating Your Wealth podcast show. But this is 10 ways to accelerate your wealth. It was designed to really help people with their finances in a simple way. So we focus on some key sections around your money mindset, some practical things that can be done with your finances, and allowing you to maximize your money and your future. So if you're thinking, hey, this stuff is interesting, then the best next step for you is to check out the book. It's an Amazon 5-star bestseller. Yeah, I know, it's great, right? Go and check it out. You can buy it on Amazon and have it with you tomorrow for a nice cup of tea. There's also reevaluating our sort of principal values around security and enjoyment. And I'm seeing this a lot for people anyway, I think after COVID, and that sort of real people living for today, wanting to create a level of security, but also they're prioritising, life short. I want to have a nice holiday, for example. So when people go into menopause and they're looking at the perimenopause and the menopause after the menopause, women tend to be, I find, a lot clearer. They don't care what people think by that stage. But through that process of the hormones changing and fluctuating can actually be one of the trickiest periods, the hardest periods to navigate. And there's this real sort of drive to find enjoyment, to get not just from a dopamine hit, but real around purpose. Where do they want to be? Where do they want to get to? So some things to consider is around, should you be, when it comes to your partner, should this be a time where you lean on your partner a little bit more and sit down and use it as a transition period to start evaluating your finances, where you can discuss what you're going out and be open and honest about your expenditure and also about theirs, and then your joint finances, and discuss how you could bring those finances potentially more together, or you could feel more aligned in terms of understanding who's paying what. The general rule of thumb that I suggest people have is that whoever's got the higher percentage of money coming in, then they would have the same equal percentage in terms of their expenditure. So it allows people that if, for example, they're earning twice as much, that they would pay twice as much for the outgoings. But it means that then the person who is earning less is paying proportionately as well. So that can be, quite a tricky piece and something to navigate. But if you're somebody that wants to take a step back from work, or you want to take a career change, or you want to learn something, a new different skill, going back to the finances and making sure you've got that security in place initially is one of the first steps. Understanding what your financial commitments are and understanding what you could change. Is it that you maybe need to downgrade your car and give your car back and get something cheaper so you haven't got so much on finance? Have you got a mortgage deal coming up and you need to make sure you get ahead to get the best interest rate? Being ahead with some of these things can mean that you can make those transitions that much easier. So it's really important to sit down with your partner and really be open about what is going on for you financially and what you need to do differently. One of the other things that you can do in this transition period is start to think about, okay, what's the goal? What does this end goal look like? Or where do you want to be in 6 months' time or 12 months' time? And start to plan ahead for that. So if you are thinking about, okay, I'm going to reduce my hours and I only need to earn X, but I only want to do that maybe for the next 2 or 3 years whilst I'm building up another business or I'm reskilling, and start to think about what is the end goal? What is actually you're trying to achieve? So it might be that you can build that into your financial plan by looking at, okay, not only what holidays we're going to have, but also, are we going to overpay on our mortgage? Do we need to sort of pay more into our investments? And of course, there's pensions over this period of time. It's also making sure you're still allocating a fair amount into your pensions over that longer term. There's, of course, periods you can take a step back, or if you're not earning, you can pause on these things. But with pension allowances, and even if you're not earning anything, you can still put £2,880 into a pension with no earnings, and you would get that topped up with tax relief, making it £3,600. So effectively, the difference between the two is free money. So that's something I'm very sort of much an advocate of, that people should be putting money into their pensions even over those gap periods, to make sure you're getting that free money and that compound effect over a period of time. Now there is an element here where ideally we should be able to go to our employer and actually speak to them about what support and help we need. So those businesses that understand the menopause, those companies that I hear about, cafe menopause sessions, they're the great people to go and speak to and talk through what you're struggling with. And I'd hope to think that there's businesses out there that want to retain their staff and want to keep their staff where they are and not have to lose them, as I described in those statistics before. But if you're not getting the resources from the workplace, then obviously you can start to turn to a coach, and a coach specifically that works with menopause and understands the symptoms and can help you put some frameworks in place. So for me personally, I was very clear about my capacity. I had to massively reduce my capacity whilst I was going through this transition, until for me, it was medication. For other people, they have to use other things. I've had Ruth Kudzi on, and she talks about how she uses exercise and yoga along with supplements and nutrition to assist with her symptoms. For other people, and like myself, we've gone full on HRT, testosterone, estrogen and progesterone, and having that in the right levels. So it was about 18 months where it wasn't at the right levels and it wasn't under control. So I was very up and down. I literally didn't know which day of the week it was sometimes, and other weeks were better than others. So I had to start to look at my diary, my work commitments, and reduce a lot of things back to mean that I was still operating financially. My business was still doing well. I was still okay financially. It still meant I could carry on paying into my pension. I could still pay all the bills, but not to the extent where I was maybe doing some of the things that I'd like to have done. You know, I'd like to maybe do the podcast. I couldn't run an event. I couldn't go networking. I couldn't do other things that I maybe would have done. I also started to be really careful about how I managed my tasks and what I then had to get done in a week. And I was just really kind with myself, if I'm honest, about stop pushing to the point where I was making myself unwell. So that then if I did need a day off or I needed to clear my diary, I had the space in the week to do it because I was able to move my week and my day around. So it really does start with being realistic and taking a step back. I also was really getting good at writing to-do lists or to-day lists and looking at what did I really need to get done today. If an ambulance turned up and I had to go off into an ambulance for whatever reason, someone was not very well and I wasn't going to come back for the rest of the day, what would I need to quickly do before I ran out the house? You know, what was really that urgent? And I operated on that kind of framework every morning, thinking if this day goes wrong, what needs to get done today? And I just got that done first, because then the rest of the day I could relax. And if I needed to shut up shop earlier, I could move that next appointment on, or I could move my day around. Making sure I had enough lunch breaks, tea breaks, and making sure that my diary was spread out. No one, through this transition period, you cannot be superwoman, and it's not healthy even if you were trying and you weren't in the menopause. It's just not a healthy thing to do. So really think about where you're at in this transition and what support you need to help you through to ensure that your finances are not overly affected. Obviously, there's the cost of having the paying for the medication as well. It's not a cheap thing to do. I had to go privately, and yes, the NHS initially covered some of that cost, but it wasn't forever. And I had to pay for a private nurse for, it was probably well over a year, and therefore, I know that I'm in a privileged position that I was able to do that. But actually it wasn't as expensive as maybe people thought. Yes, there was an initial appointment that cost a little bit of money. To get the medication was actually not too bad. But once I got the levels under control, the medication cost was actually not that excessive. I think it does depend on where you go. There are some clinics that I think are extortionate, but you can find people that are reasonable, that can support you, normally like private nurses, freelance nurses, that kind of thing. I hope that's been of help to you today, and if you're struggling with any of that, then do get in touch. We do have some great tools and resources. So we have many other podcasts, so you can listen to other people being interviewed around the menopause. We also have Catherine Gale, who's a menopause nurse, who did a session with us a few podcasts ago, not menopauses ago, a few podcasts ago. And we've also got my book, which is Accelerating Your Wealth, 10 Ways to Accelerate Your Wealth. And then which applies to everybody at any point of life. And then there's also, I have a wealth planner, which I find is really nice writing things down. Sometimes being on our phones is not great. And if you've got lots of things going around in your head, writing things in the journal and writing things in the planner can be really, really helpful. So you can find those books on Amazon. The book is like £10-12, and then the planner is about £30-40. And it's actually, you can use it for the whole year. I hope that's been helpful, and thanks for listening. Thank you for joining us today at Accelerating Your Wealth with your host, myself, Rebecca Robertson. I hope you enjoyed the show. Do subscribe and let us know in the comments any of your thoughts.